the frozen tundra of Alaska, and the warm waters of the Caribbean. At first, you wouldn't think they would have anything in common, but yet the same paranormal activity is occurring in both locations. Join us today on Speaking of Spirits as we discuss the Alaska and Bermuda Triangles.
Good evening. We're glad that you're with us. This is Speaking of Spirits, and tonight we're going to talk about the triangles. I'm sure that you have heard about the Alaskan Triangle, maybe not, or the Bermuda Triangle, also called the Devil's Triangle, and we also have another triangle that I've actually never heard of before. So tonight we have Tim England.
Woo! Happy to be here.
And tonight as a guest, Shelby Bloomquist.
Hello.
So, according to the travelchannel.com, the Alaskan Triangle, that's the first triangle that we'll talk about tonight, is an area between, and I have no idea how to say this, Utqiagvik?
That's the closest I've ever heard.
We're gonna common spelling, Anchorage and Juneau, and is comprised of vast boreal forests, barren tundra, and icy peaks. Hundreds of coordinated search and rescue missions take place every year to find missing residents, hikers, tourists, airplane passengers, often to no avail. And I know that we talked a little bit when we were talking about Bigfoot on the Alaskan Triangle, because such a huge amount of Bigfoot sightings come from the Alaskan Triangle.
It is true. It's amazing how a lot of sightings and weirdness happens around triangles.
Yes. So, this Alaskan Triangle has a long history of losses. In 1950, one of the nation's largest disappearances of military aircraft and personnel occurred in this region. It's a C-54 Skymaster, which is a very large aircraft. Okay, carrying an 8-man crew and 36 passengers, left Anchorage at 1 p.m. January 26th. The airliner made a routine radio check-in 2 hours later as it flew over a small town in the Yukon. It was the last communication anyone ever received from the flight. A search and rescue effort was mounted incorporating the U.S. and Canadian planes, aided by thousands of volunteers on foot, but nothing was ever found of the C-54.
Oh, goodness.
So just recently, there was a plane that just disappeared. I forget the call sign all of a sudden. I had it when I first opened my mouth. And it's shocking today when a plane just disappears.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, the Civil Air Patrol, I don't know if any of you guys out there in listener audience has ever heard about that, but it's called CAP. Back after, I want to say World War II, the CAP came into existence. It's a civilian form of the Air Force. And because there were so many private pilots, therefore there were thousands of airplanes going down. And my dad flew close to 5,000 mission hours in the CAP in the Sierra Nevadas trying to find downed aircraft. Yeah. So it's fascinating. I mean, back then you kind of expected it. Not everything is tracked. Not every flight is tracked. But every military flight is tracked. Mm-hmm. Every one of them. I was an air traffic controller in the Navy. There's a flight plan. There's flight following. Everything is tracked. These aren't civilians. This particular aircraft was military. There should be signs. There should be signs.
Definitely.
So later there was a disappearance of the U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and he was in a private aircraft. This was 1972. And this was really what kind of put the Alaskan Triangle on the map. The plane lost contact amidst a storm somewhere between Anchorage and Juneau. The ensuing effort to find the wreckage or survivors was one of the largest in U.S. history. Unfortunately, after 39 days with no traces of the passengers or plane, the investigation was ended. Since then, other people have been reported missing, and it's not just flights. It's all kinds of people. There's been over 16,000 people have disappeared in the Alaskan Triangle since 1988.
Well, on average, in any given year, it's like 500 to 2,000 people a year going missing in here. Going missing in there.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal amount of people, but considering the size of the bear and everything else in Alaska.
And especially the population.
Yes.
That's a real high percentage. I, just in one of the TikTok loopholes I go down, it seemed that they were trying to track the Aurora Borealis with, there's different energy waves with it. Some are really strong, some are smaller. And they were trying to track the Aurora Borealis waves with the disappearances, if it was a high one or a low one.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, the person disappeared. Dun dun dun.
What?
Yeah, I couldn't find him anymore.
That's awesome.
My gosh.
I mean, not for him or her, but...
The last post I saw, he was like, I got some cool information, and then nothing. I was like, oh.
Uh-oh.
Well,
That's actually kind of fascinating, though, because... So the disappearances are blamed on everything from severe weather, as you might imagine in Alaska. The storms are intense, and they're huge, right? To aliens, to swirling energy vortexes, which I guess you're talking about, to an evil shape-shifting demon of... Boy, I'll tell you, these Alaskan names get me. Tlingit. Tingit? Indian lore called the Kushtaka.
Yes.
And if that's a dirty word somewhere, I'm sorry, but I'm just saying this is what was written on the internet. But most likely the explanation is wilderness. The wilderness. Mm-hmm. Those people on foot, definitely.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Well, a good chunk of them, like when people go back to look at their pictures of like, hey, this is who we're looking for, they're ill-prepped. Some of them, they're like, oh, we're warm right now, so they're in shorts and like a tank top and probably like a flannel button-up, and that's it, with a pack. And they're like, we can take this on. Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah. I mean, what was that? Was it called Into the Wild?
Oh, yes.
The
Christopher McCandless.
Yes.
Candless or something.
Yes. He went and he ended up dying in that bus. Yeah, that was a horrific true story.
And if you go out into the wilderness and you need a book to know what to eat, you probably shouldn't go.
No, I would suggest that you probably take some preparedness classes for several years before you attempt something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people, well, it's part of the States. Well, I can survive in the States, and it's like, no, this is no man's land for the most part. Like,
right.
Yes, it is a part of the States, but... It's like that crazy uncle that lives up in the forest that can survive nuclear fallout and everything, So the average person can't survive up there.
If you're not Uncle Ernest, don't go.
Yes.
So, almost as perplexing as the sheer volume of vanishings are the theories as to what causes them. In 1980, a 1986 report made to the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, from a Japanese cargo flight provides the basis for one extraterrestrial theory. Allegedly, Japan Airlines Flight 1628 encountered 3 unidentified aerial phenomena above the expanse of the triangle area. Yeah. The pilot reportedly thought the craft were military and paid them no mind. Moments later, he realized the objects were keeping pace and moving erratically all around his jet.
It's amazing what weather balloons can do nowadays.
yeah. Isn't it though? Over the next 50 minutes, the strange aircraft shadowed Flight 1628's every move while emitting bursts of blinding lights. Statements made by the crew were verified by civilian and military radar, and the FAA report went on to garner national attention. That's pretty fascinating, considering what the Navy released last year
Yeah.
with...
Isn't it amazing how that wasn't a big deal?
What?
Oh, yeah.
I know, because we're like, yeah, okay, so it's UFOs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we are. Yeah, everybody knew anyway.
Yeah.
Moving on.
I know, right? Yeah. So, another theory postulates that the triangle is home to massive swirling energy vortexes. And that kind of goes to your Northern Lights.
Aurora Borealis.
Yeah. Which is a really cool C.W. McCall song. Have you ever heard it?
I have.
Isn't it a great song?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is.
So,
So I was a truck driver for a really long time. And I basically drove from Boise, Idaho to Pocatello, Idaho, back and forth every night. And it sucked really bad. The one bright light was...
the Aurora Borealis.
I saw it twice.
Really?
Wow.
In my 10 years. And it was
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
Like, stupid cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to pull over and have a conversation with it. It was great.
Wow.
But it was really weak.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Down
just barely
this
saw
far.
it, and it was cool, wavy, green, lighty things.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen pictures in north, is
Right.
what we'll say, and it's fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine the energy that would be in
People
that
say
thing.
they could almost feel like a buzzing, and you could hear clicking.
Mhm.
They're still doing research on it.
I wonder if clicking like static electricity pops kind of
I
thing.
can't exactly remember. I had seen this episode a while ago, and it was some like obscure Discovery Channel, like, hey, we're just filling time slots kind of thing. And there are still some researchers out there that it was relatively recent that they heard these clicking noises and started to think, well, maybe I'm not hallucinating. Because the first guy that heard it was like, oh, okay, and then he got some more people involved, and they're like, yeah, we hear it too. It's not just you.
Interesting.
And so I'm wondering, like you said, if it is.
That's
like-
interesting. So,
That breaks down to perceived ions, which is a whole different
Oh,
podcast.
okay.
well, I was just thinking of, when you pull the blanket off your bed
Oh.
and shock your cat, and they go running from the room. That
little-
crackle, snap, pop thing.
I actually think
Not
they
that I do that
changed
on purpose.
the word.
What?
So way back when I first read about it, they were calling it perceived ions. And it was basically...
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
That your perception is not my perception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, there we have it. Anyway, the cool part is energy.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't destroy energy. And how much is there? And what can it do? When I was reading through both the triangles, the Bermuda and the Alaska Triangle, some obscure Tesla reference popped in my mind.
Yeah.
And he was more than sure that you could transfer energy wirelessly for free.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was so amazing.
Oh, yeah.
He really was. And so, again, TikTok loopholes, you'll have to forgive me if this is fibs or proven otherwise. This is the Tim memory. And right after the Tesla book, I read a book, and I can't remember the name or the author.
He's
but-
really helpful.
He said that the pyramids were
Yes.
energy receptacles, and that it was kind of like a distribution center of energies.
Easter
Oh, yeah.
Island as well.
Mhm.
I had that pop up in this.
Yeah.
So, if you have all of this energy and it's not being used, who's to say it doesn't discharge every once in a while?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's an interesting theory, actually.
Well, and then on one of the things I was reading, that there's belief of like positive energy vortexes, and then the negative, and people that are woke and want to be in tune, they go in search of these positive ones. And it's like, obviously we've associated the Alaskan trial with negative vortexes, but they're like, no, I think there's probably some positivity out there if you want to find it. But with these negative vortexes, there's been a lot of occurrences where hallucinations, confusion, they feel drained, audio hallucinations, disorientation. But on the flip side, with the positive ones, you feel enlightened, you feel recharged, you feel all this stuff, and so I think that's a big draw as well, and could lead into why some people just get lost out there.
It's not the shrooms they're eating out in the woods.
Well, they didn't really read that book too closely.
Yeah. But I think you're right. It's kind of funny because when we talk about vortexes, I remember Mark saying the last time we talked about it, he goes, "You can't hear my eyes roll back in my head." Yeah. And for those wanting to know, Mark is back on the road as a long haul truck driver, so he's not able to join us for a little while, but he'll be back in the studio soon. And when you were talking about those vortexes, right? So the clockwise spinning vortex is positive, counterclockwise is negative. And electronic readings have found higher intensities of magnetic irregularities in Alaska. So search teams have reported compass malfunctions up to 30 degrees off, and volunteers often recount experiencing mysterious symptoms while searching the area, like disorientation and audio hallucinations. Now, I know the Sierra Nevadas, and there are some areas where I've backpacked where there's magnetite, right? So it's in the rock, it's rock formations, and it will cause your compass to spin. So one of my favorite places, the Desolation Wilderness, it's kind of my backyard where I grew up, and a lot of people go missing up there. And if you're not prepared to deal with that, I have a great sense of direction, thankfully, because I've never been lost up there, and I've backpacked it on my own. Your compass will spin. Yeah.
Can you imagine not reading that in your book? And you're like down, and you're like, oh my god, it's just like spinning.
Right. Yep.
I've seen 2012. I know what's happening next.
Exactly. Well, and Idaho kind of has a portion, the Frank Church Wilderness. I don't think there's any of like the spinning compasses and stuff, but a lot of people get lost up there for a similar reason. They just get bursts of this disorientation. So maybe that's something to look into too. That made me think of that.
Oh, that's interesting.
They lose a lot.
Despite the plethora of paranormal theories, the terrain itself offers the most likely explanation of the disappearances. Massive glaciers that populate the area typically have a brittle crust. So the layer can fracture at any moment's notice, and it will open a deep crevasse or moulins that can stretch all the way to the bottom of the glacier.
Jeez.
I can't even imagine getting sucked down into that sucker.
Mammoths and all this stuff as you're...
Oh, I know, right? No.
There's the acorn.
Yeah, and then...
Maybe that's the whole thing. There's this Ice Age squirrel running up out there.
Plucking stuff, yeah. Occasionally the glaciers will give up their dead, and the people in the aircraft are often uncovered when this crust breaks away. So that's possible. That doesn't explain to me when you have a flight being followed. So when an aircraft goes up, military, or something that's being tracked to an FAA system, right? You have souls on board. I guess we're not allowed to say that anymore. People on board, souls on board, and calculated fuel. And you know where they're going, where they're from, and their route of travel, right? Because you have points along the way that their radar's pinging. So based on where their last ping was, you can calculate at their airspeed where they could be. Yeah. And then so you go out to that circumference and you start backing in to the last ping, right? So you know like the potential for the greatest amount of travel in their last ping. So why they can't find the military aircraft, unless it's sucked off the planet somehow, or it's down in the bottom of water, right? Did it hit a glacier and then break the crust and then was taken down into a crevasse? I mean, that could happen, you know. Scary thought, but I mean, it can happen. And you think about how many tens of thousands of aircraft are flying in Alaska every given day, because a lot of these places are so remote that the only way they're getting supplies is on an aircraft.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of them are piloted by bush pilots that are like trained very well.
Oh,
in
they're
these situations.
incredibly
That
good pilots.
That
Yeah.
even flying where they can't see out. You just think, okay, well, they got to see the top of that glacier. They got to see the top of this. You can't.
Right.
Even the most trained, you can't.
Right.
And it's...
Well, so you have to be IFR trained, which is instrument flight rating, trained to fly in that kind of weather. And you're relying completely on your instruments. And it's very easy if you're young IFR pilot, not young in age, but young and experienced. This is what happened to JFK Jr. He was IFR trained, IFR rated in an IFR aircraft, and he took his plane right into the ocean because he could no longer see the horizon because of the fog. If he would have hit autopilot, it would have corrected his flight. But he took it right down into the water because he thought he was flying level, and he was in a dive. And that happens to people all the time because you're relying on your sight, your instincts, your human brain when your aircraft knows better. So calculate, if you have autopilot, you calculate where you're going and it should correct for you, but a lot of people won't do it.
Oh my goodness.
So
I'm trying to find the word, and the only word that the internet is telling me is suction.
Yeah.
So there's hospitals, mortuaries, your local friendly plastic surgeon. They use devices that use water suction still to this day. It's just that powerful of a tool to suck stuff out. And by golly, we have a lot of water here.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how we know all these physics and things, and we use them, and how it's possible that the world can do it. Like, it is.
Oh, yeah.
And when we were thinking about both the triangles again, my memory went back to the Skinwalker Ranch. We did a couple podcasts on that. But one of the episodes that blew my mind was when they were able to use the ground to conduct electricity. That was pretty cool. Could you affect it? Maybe. Yeah. But nonetheless, blew my mind. And if that is true, and it is there, who says it's not other places?
Oh, yeah.
And what would that do? Who knows? To instruments, anything.
Right,
Definitely.
true. So I was looking at adventure.howstuffworks.com. Accidental injuries are the third highest cause of death in Alaska, which is twice the national incidence rate. So in addition to car accidents, this category of fatalities can also include people falling down mountains or slipping down into spaces between the glaciers, right, the crevasses. Of those accidental deaths, drowning is the third highest cause of death in Alaska, which I wouldn't have thought.
Probably falling through ice and stuff.
I guess so. I guess that would make sense.
Once you fall through, sometimes the ice will flip or it just goes right back together and you can't find...
Right. Many times the cold temperatures cause bodies to sink to the bottom of the water rather than float to the top, which is challenging. I know that happens, I think, in Lake Superior, one of our Great Lakes. And it can happen in Tahoe sometimes.
It happens here sometimes.
So, So the Alaskan Triangle is interesting. Like I said, if you look into it, it's kind of huge amounts of Bigfoot sightings. We talked about that in our Bigfoot episode.
Well, and then there's it's almost like what was compared to a cross between the Wendigo and a Sasquatch. I found the creature you talked about, the Kushtaka, which translates to land otter man.
Did you just say something about a hybrid Sasquatch?
Yeah.
Okay, blew my mind.
I know. I was when I read that, I was like,
I'm gonna have to
goodness.
Ask everybody on TikTok now.
Oh yeah, I went down the Wendigo rabbit hole a long time ago, and that for cryptids out there, that's kind of like my favorite. And I was like, same thing. There's a hybrid with Sasquatch possibly out there. That was the closest they could.
So the Sasquatch is okay. How is it hybrid again?
Wendigo, Sasquatch.
So Wendigo, isn't that a shapeshifter?
Kind of. It's believed that it was someone who was lost and actually ended up having to eat human flesh is one of the theories.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And they just kind of become one with the forest and they're
yeah.
a haunted spirit kind of thing.
Okay.
Well, when you really love someone.
Yeah. Well, this land otter man, the Lingot and the Tsimshian folklore, there's two sides to it. One, they think it's is horrible and it causes all these things and will be the downfall of humans. You know, when they're out there, it's a trickster. It could mimic voices to lure people. Sometimes it sounds like a crying woman, a baby, or whatnot. And then with I think it was the Lingots, they thought it was actually a blessing, kind of like the protector of the forest and the animals, and was nice and was helpful to people. And there's a myth within the myth that said if they find a human in danger or near death, that they'll change it into another kushtaka to save it. And I didn't go too far down that one, but a lot of people, they act like they don't believe in it, but they have found people, because it's believed that copper and stuff will ward it off, and they found them with pieces of copper in their backpacks and stuff, and it was just kind of an interesting little side.
So wear your copper bracelet when you're going to Alaska, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. I'm down. Okay.
Yeah?
It's all about perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
Reminds me of a meme I saw.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. It was raining. Oh man, I had it right before.
You know what? He's getting old, so his memory's shot.
He really is. His male pattern balding is fantastic too. On point. When bodies hit the floor and it's raining men are the same song but different perspectives.
Oh yes.
So, anything else on the Alaskan Triangle? Should we move on?
I'm gonna move on.
All right. We're hitting the Bermuda Triangle, which is one of my favorites. The Devil's Triangle.
Da-da-da.
Da-da-da. So the coin, the coin Bermuda Triangle, the phrase was coined in 1964. Great year, just saying. And it's a mystery it's pretty much captured every generation. I mean, it's, but that's not to say that disappearances didn't start till 1964. So there's been a plethora, I love that word, of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle. And so the Bermuda Triangle is that area that's down off Florida and Bermuda. In Puerto Rico. Yeah, there's no really agreement as to exactly where it is, but general idea. So there's according to an article on the triangle in the Skeptic Encyclopedia of Pseudoscience.
Wow.
I know, can you
Say
believe
that
that?
5 times fast.
Some sources describe the Bermuda Triangle as being about 193,000 square miles in area, while others ascribe to it as being 3 times that size, including the Azores and the West Indies. So I don't know. Anyway, dude, it's large. It's really, really large. And centuries before anyone heard of the triangle, the island of Bermuda developed a reputation as a mysterious and dangerous place where mariners faced peril. A 1609 pamphlet described the island as a most prodigious... Is that prodigious? Prodigious? No. Prodigious and enchanted place, affording nothing but gusts, storms, and foul weather. And even compared it to some sea monsters mentioned in Homer's The Odyssey. I'm not even going there. I can't pronounce anything, so there you go. Some have pointed to Bermuda as a possible model for the site of the shipwreck depicted in William Shakespeare's play The Tempest. Mm-hmm. Yep. So...
Well, you know who the first reporter of weirdness there was? Christopher Columbus.
Oh, yeah, his manatees.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, his mermaids.
Well,
his mermaids.
He said that there was weird lights there.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Da-da-da.
Da-da-da. Interest in the Bermuda Triangle continued to grow after the publication The Bermuda Triangle, a book by Charles Berlitz and J. Manson Valentine, which sold millions of copies. Producers of the 1974 documentary The Devil's Triangle, narrated by horror movie star Vincent Price, and I love him, offered a $10,000 reward to any viewer who could solve the mystery. TV series such as The Wonder Woman and Scooby-Doo used the Bermuda Triangle as a setting for episodes, and Milton Bradley marketed a Bermuda Triangle game, and I would love to get that.
Tailspin did too.
Oh,
really?
Did? Okay.
The triangle featured in the 1977 Steven Spielberg movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So as they said that, I was like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was the Devil's Tower. So
Yeah. Mashed taters.
What?
I don't.
Tim's lost me on his tater reference.
Yeah.
Oh, the Devil's Tower was made out of mashed.
Oh,
yeah, that's right.
okay.
Yeah, in the living room, right? Yeah. The band Fleetwood Mac in 1974 did a song called Bermuda Triangle, which warned that it might be a hole in the ocean or a fog that won't let go.
Or both.
That was causing the disappearances. Or both, yeah. So, some of the disappearances I found were the Mary Celeste, right? If you're at all interested in strange disappearances of ships, the Mary Celeste is right up there, right?
Yeah.
Discovered on the 4th of December, 1872, with everything right in place except for the crew. The entire crew's gone. The ship was found stranded on the sea days after starting its journey from New York to Genoa, Italy. There were 7 crew members and Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, and the 2-year-old daughter aboard the vessel, loaded with raw alcohol, which could be an indication there of what happened.
That's a big red flag.
So I was in the Navy, however, maritime, a woman on a vessel is bad luck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So it could be his wife and daughter that caused the luck, right? I don't believe that for a minute, just saying. Anyway.
That would be interesting, though, to compare how, with all these sinking ships,
How many had women?
and there actually is like a correlation. You're like, you were just going to forget about that.
I know.
So again, read a book. And they suggested that it distracted the crew so much that the accidents elevated.
Oh.
So it wasn't the women per se that were there for bad.
Oh, see, it's the inattentive. Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
That makes a whole lot more sense. I like that theory. Days after, when a passing British ship called the De Gracia found the Mary Celeste under partial sail in the Atlantic off the Azore Island, the ship was unmanned with no crew aboard, and the lifeboat was missing. It was also found that 9 barrels in the cargo were empty. So, again, alcohol. And there was a sword on the deck. No trace of the people aboard the vessel or the missing lifeboat were ever found. Studies of the ship clearly ruled out the possibility of a pirate attack, since everything on the ship, including the barrels of alcohol it was transporting and the crew's valuable belongings, were intact. Theories surrounding the mystery of the Mary Celeste also include the chances of a criminal conspiracy, alien abduction, and attack by a giant squid. The possibility of a natural disaster was also on the list. Many suggest the role of the undersea earthquake behind the accident. I don't know how that would be, but anyway. Lots of speculations.
Oh, yeah.
But the one that I saw, I believe it was the Discovery Channel, where they talked about the release of methane.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. You should go watch it. I don't know if I bought the airplane one.
Yeah, you'd lose the same. So what Tim was talking about is the disappearing vessels. So the Mary Celeste was very much a vessel that didn't disappear. But
Yeah, right. Sorry, my fault.
He's
Jump
going
the gun.
he's going down a rabbit hole.
the
But
gun.
so there's a lot of disappearances of aircraft and marine vessels in the Triangle in Bermuda Triangle.
And basically, it was they released a whole bunch of methane on a boat, a model boat in an aquarium thingy, so you can watch it. Mm-hmm. And the boat flat out sunk all the way down in like 2 seconds.
So how you would down an aircraft with that? It's the same thing, right? So what happens with a vessel on the water? The methane is released from the seafloor naturally. I mean, it's just natural deposits down there. They belch up, and a ship's going over the top of it. It's going to lose buoyancy and just get swallowed. It just goes down instantly. So the same thing. That methane comes up through the water. It displaces the air. So if you're flying over that displacement of air, the aircraft is going to come down because
Yes.
Because it's a large volume.
The thing that I don't get, and maybe someday it'll click in for me, is planes are going at speed, and they have altitude.
Right.
So, I don't know. You would think it'd have to be a real big cloud or a real big gas.
I think it is, but you have to remember that it's not. I don't know that it's displacing like a jet airliner.
Right.
You're talking about Avengers.
Okay.
They're flying
when you
lower.
bring it that way.
They're flying lower. They're flying lower, and they are going pretty fast, but they're not going at the Mach speeds we're going now.
Yeah.
So.
Fine. So I will concede defeat.
Yeah. So just saying, but maybe I don't know but think about it. The volume to bring down a ginormous ship. That's a lot of gas being released.
Oh yeah, and there's several hundreds of ships down there.
Yes.
Is to have that many pockets come up.
Oh, it's belching all the time.
Yeah, with everything decomposing and stuff. I get it, but at the same time, it's like for every instance, though.
Yeah, that to me, it's so yeah. It's amazing though what is going on the seafloor, because I know when I lived in Texas, we would have huge spheres of tar wash up on the shore. And it's naturally occurring. It's not just because there's oil and gas extraction going way out there. It's, there's fractures in the seafloor, and they form. They burp up tar, and it rolls around in the ocean, becomes a sphere, and then all of a sudden it makes its way on the beach. It's kind of interesting to see. But
or it could just be Atlantis.
Yeah, you could be. So there's also a mystery called. It was a schooner called the Ellen Austin in 1881, 210 feet long. That's long. That's a big ship. Yeah. Ellen Austin was going to New York from London when she stumbled upon a derelict near the Bermuda Triangle. Everything seemed fine with the unidentified schooner, was just drifting, and the crew was gone. Again. Jeez. Captain Baker of the Ellen Austin asked to observe the derelict for 2 days to make sure it was not a trap. After 2 days with no response from the ship, the captain entered the abandoned vessel and with his crew to find a well-packed shipment and no sign of the crew. They towed it back, because if you find a derelict rig, it's yours. Yep. So that's maritime law. It's yours. So they towed it back. The captain placed a prize crew on the ship and set to sail together. However, after 2 days, so I guess, he finds the ship. They decide to sail it. After 2 days of sailing on calm waters, a squall separated the path of the two ships together. Ooh. Oh, okay, so he was bringing the derelict back. Didn't read right. The derelict, so he has his crew on his ship. He puts another crew on the derelict ship, and then this storm hits it, a squall, and the path of the two ships were parted. They got away from each other, and the derelict vanished again. So it vanished.
Well, and that happened with the one you previously mentioned, the one back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
The same thing happened. After finding what was the name of it? The one before this. The
Mary Celeste?
Yeah. The crew that found the boat, the captain split the crew, put it on that to tow it back. They got into a fog. That crew disappeared too.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating.
It was empty again, like no one had ever been on the boat.
So the one that we're talking about right now...
But even less alcohol?
Probably,
yeah,
probably.
Well, Ellen, so this Captain Baker notices that the vessel, through his spyglass, he noticed that the vessel with his other crew on it was parting, like they were getting away from him, right? And they could not ever catch up with it. Like it just was always out of their reach. And when they finally caught up with it, after hours and hours, no one was on board. So this is the second time total crews vanished. Yeah. That's like fascinating to me. And this was not like...
Well, there's like, to connect to this, there's speculation that they go through almost like vortexes of time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, even that's kind of like, but it makes you wonder, okay, for them to just disappear like that, are they going through a vortex of time? And, or something.
Like a
for the ship
dimension,
not to be,
a different dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for the ship not to be, damaged or anything gone except
the
living things.
What was that?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. The movie?
The Stephen King movie where they were on the plane. And it was like the Pac-Man thing where eating the planet. And as long as they were asleep, they survived it. But if they were awake, they were taken.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that was a...
I was actually thinking of a different one. I don't think it was called Bermuda, where a whole aircraft carrier went through a vortex in time.
Oh, that like it was. Oh,
wasn't that
like World War II?
That was the Philadelphia experiment.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Well, then there was a show recently, like in the last 2 years. It was like a series where a flight vanished and they came back 10 years later.
Yeah,
kind of thing too.
I did.
But that's what was mostly mentioned with the time and dimension was aircrafts and not necessarily the ships. But why wouldn't it affect the ships as well? Possibly.
So another really famous disappearance was the USS Cyclops, 1918. 540-foot long naval vessel outfitted with 50 caliber guns, which is what I want mounted on my front porch. Took on a load of 10,000 tons of manganese ore in Brazil, and then sailed north to Barbados, where it was resupplied for a 9-day voyage to Baltimore Harbor. After leaving Barbados, the ship and its 309 men were never seen nor heard from again. Navy cruisers searched the ocean but saw no sign of the ship, no oil slick, and the Navy eventually declared the crew lost at sea. It was the greatest loss of life in a non-combat situation in U.S. naval history. Jeez. While the ship's fate was never been officially resolved, Marvin Barash, a researcher who is a descendant of one of the lost crew members, told the Washington Post that he believes a combination of events, that the ship was unbalanced by a very heavy load, engine breakdowns, and a big wave struck the vessel, sent it to the bottom of the Puerto Rico Trench, which is the deepest part of the Atlantic. But who knows? It's a speculation.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I wonder how much, we still have pirates,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But how often some of these disappearances and stuff are actually pirate raids. You're down in a pretty lawless area way back, and even now they're still kind of lawless. That kind of, to me, some of these where they just found not a lot disturbed, human trafficking or something like that, pirates would take...
Pirates would take, like, all the alcohol in that one ship.
Yeah,
they would take all of the jewelry and all of the belongings.
Worth their time.
For the entire crew, not just once but twice to vanish, that's weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's weird. Like that one captain caught up with the ship eventually, and his crew was gone. I mean, it was his crew, too. It wasn't people he didn't know. It was his crew. They were gone. So, so what would cause you to either abandon ship and jump into the water and just die? What would cause that? Why would you do that?
Maybe they time vortexed a submarine.
Yeah.
right.
Or I wonder, if there is pockets of energy and stuff out there, if it just kind of made them hallucinate these vortexes and stuff, and
possible. So, of course, very famous, the U.S. Navy Adventures Flight 19 in 1945. Cool. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Well, yeah. It's probably the best known of the disappearances. 5 Avenger torpedo bombers took off from the U.S. Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale on the afternoon of December 5th, 1945. It was a routine exercise in which they were to fly 150 miles due east and then north for 40 miles and then return to base. All 5 pilots were experienced aviators, and the planes had been checked out mechanically prior to takeoff. Nevertheless, an hour and 45 minutes after takeoff from the Fort Lauderdale tower got a call from the flight leader, Charles Taylor, who sounded confused and said he couldn't see land. We cannot be sure of where we are, he explained. Radio contact was lost until 10 minutes later, when other crew members' voices could be heard, sounding similarly disoriented. 20 minutes after that, another pilot came on again. It looks like we're entering white water. We're completely lost, he said. After that, there was only silence. Within minutes, a Mariner seaplane and a 13-man crew were sent out to the Avenger's last known position, only to vanish as well. For 5 days, the Navy searched for the lost aircraft, covering 250,000 square miles of the Atlantic, and found no trace of them. This account, it says it left out some details. 4 of the pilots were actually students who were flying to get experienced. The instructor, Taylor, for some reason, had asked to be relieved of his duties before takeoff. The request was denied. Taylor also radioed that the compasses had failed, but in reality, he likely wasn't trusting them, as he thought he was over the Florida Keys when he was actually over the Bahamas, the opposite direction. This was actually the 3rd flight where Taylor had gotten lost. Naval experts believe the planes ran out of fuel and crashed. So there's some discrepancies there. I'm not sure what is accurate on that, but there's quite a lot out there on the lost flight of the Avengers to read.
And it's always they talk about the Avengers. Very rarely do they bring up the Mariner.
Yeah, the Mariner that was sent after them. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's kind of like, well, what about this other one?
I'm not there. Yeah.
What happened there?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Got close together and.
UFOs.
Yeah.
UFOs.
Yep. December 28, 1948, DC passenger plane, considered to be one of the most reliable aircraft ever built, and a beauty she was, I'll tell you. She was flying on a route from San Juan, Puerto Rico to Miami. Weather was good. When the plane was 50 miles from Miami, the captain contacted Air Traffic Control Center in New Orleans to give the coordinates, which was strange because he should have been radioing Miami. The communication was the last anyone heard from the plane. 3 crew members, 29 passengers aboard. Coast Guard searched. U.S. Navy, Air Force all searched for this aircraft, and they never found it. So, again, it seems like there's compass issues, radio failure. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on out there, aircraft and vessels. I mean, the list goes on and on. You've got the Sulphur Queen in 1963, the Milwaukee's 440th Airlift Wing, Plane 680 in 1965. Just a list just goes on and on and on. Of course, we're talking about a huge area. Of course, one of my favorites called the Witchcraft in 1967, a cabin cruiser. This one was kind of interesting because it was a 23-foot luxury yacht, which they were going out to look at Miami's Christmas lights.
Oh.
Great weather.
Yes.
Like perfect weather. And they were only a mile offshore, which isn't far. Yeah. I mean, the Coast Guard received a call from the captain stating that his ship had hit something, but there wasn't any substantial damage. They needed to be towed to shore. The Coast Guard set off immediately, reaching the Witchcraft in 19 minutes. Yeah. But there was nothing there. The vessel was never seen again. I mean, so in 19 minutes, this thing disappeared. Yeah. That was kind of an interesting,
bunch of coincidences.
Yeah. I don't believe in coincidences. So, They searched hundreds of square miles of ocean the next few days, never found anything. The ship and the crew were gone. And one of the things I read was that in almost every account of mystery surrounding the Bermuda Triangle, you'll see reference to the fact that it's one of only 2 places on Earth, the other being the Devil's Sea off the coast of Japan, where a compass points to true north rather than magnetic north, right? So if you hike at all, or you're used to doing any kind of work off a compass, you have to know your angle of declination, which is how much you vary from true north. When your compass points to north, it's pointing to magnetic north, typically, so except for these 2 locations. So you have to correct for that. So you have to know your angle of declination away from true north. Is it 12 degrees? Is it whatever? And account for that when you're using your compass. The agonic line also is an imaginary line where true north and magnetic north are in perfect alignment. And this happens also in the Bermuda Triangle. So it's kind of some fascinating polarity issues there too.
Yeah. That would...
So we were speaking earlier. I have a friend who likes the flat Earth theory, and that's what he brought up. It was pretty fun.
What about the Bermuda Triangle?
That it lined up, or
the magnetic declination. And long story short, you can look into it yourself and see how you feel about it.
So I don't know. There's another triangle, Shelby, that you were looking into.
Yeah. So in my research of this, a triangle called the Dragon Triangle, and I'm probably butchering this, but the Yamatal Island, the Philippines, and Guam. There's another triangle out there that very similar occurrences happen. Ships sink and planes kind of get lost out there. I didn't dig into it too much, but it was kind of interesting to hear, and it'd be interesting to delve into, more similarities if there are any with lines, true north. Is there a true north there as well? Does that pop up and those kind of things? I should have looked into it a little bit more, but
yeah, I think there might be, if you really looked into this and really went down all the different rabbit holes, there might be mini triangles throughout the Earth.
Oh yeah,
that you could point to disappearances.
Well,
and
Amelia Earhart.
Earhart. Yeah.
Is the Dragon's Triangle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, speculation.
Right.
Around there is where.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, so, the Caribbean areas of shallow water, which, is treacherous to ships. But at the same time, it also has some of the deepest trenches.
Oh, yeah.
So.
That just changed in an instant. There's no decline.
Although when they say shallow water, we're not talking wading at your knee level here. We're, so I still think it might be shallow, but a vessel can still get through it. It's still, may not be 10,000 feet deep. It's 5,000 feet deep. Yeah. So, but there's also a lot of seismic activity in these areas. And so in 1817, a 7.4 seismic earthquake at the northern end of the triangle caused a tsunami to toss ships as far north as the Delaware River in Philadelphia.
Oh my goodness.
So those kind of events could account for some of the losses, the methane gas and rogue waves.
Oh yeah.
You get there's movies on these things that they're just an incredible phenomenon.
There's even a YouTube video of a rogue wave. It's the craziest thing.
Oh.
You won't catch this guy on the ocean. Sorry. It's crazy what's in there and what it can do, and the power and the energy and everything, and it's almost as if people don't respect it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy how, I've been deep sea fishing, and you get out far enough, you're like, how can these people lose land? If they left land and didn't go, quote, too far, how can you lose land? You get out there far enough.
You can't see anything.
You can't see anything. And it really messes with your mind. I remember I was about 13, 14. I'm like, oh my God. I really hope we could get back. Like, oh my gosh. Kind of a freak out thing. And it's like, to have that in a situation where you might be disoriented or have these weird other occurrences happen, I can only imagine what that could do to someone's mind.
Yeah, it's a special breed of people who are out there doing this stuff. And think about the sailors before modern technology.
Yeah.
I mean, they were charting from the stars, and they were very good at what they do. I just,
Which would makes me question, what if you did kind of an experiment where you had the same vessel, but two of them, exact same. One ran on, the today's modern instruments, and then you ran the other one on, tracking the stars and sextants and all that kind of stuff, and see, is there a difference? What was the differences that they saw, or, if it affected the modern instruments compared to the old ones, and to see, kind of chart their trip just to see what, if any discrepancies happened, if they could truly get through it because they're not depending on modern stuff. If that makes sense. Like, I'm trying to get it out.
No, I get what you're saying, but so many of these losses happen without modern.
Oh, yeah.
But it would be an interesting experiment in all of these different triangles to put, to have, two ships side by side, one without modern, one with, and see what would happen. Although I don't, I sometimes I just think that there's places on the planet that they're like doomed. I mean, they're just, you're regardless if it's on the sea, Tim, or where Tim's never going, or
I would not,
sign up for that in the air where I love, or on if you're walking or camping or hiking or doing whatever in your ATV, so many people they vanish.
Oh yeah. Well, I think some people, in a majority, we're kind of, in today's society, we think we've conquered Earth, we've conquered the world, the natural world. We're above it. This is proof it can swallow us in a second.
Yeah.
It could demolish us. We're not top dog in this fight. At the end of the day on some of these things.
So I tell this little story from somebody that I worked with who worked in Alaska for a number of years. And I know him to be, he's a scientist. He's a very credible guy. And you're going to think this is absolute bogus, but so he's working up there, and I guess roads that are maintained in Alaska, dirt roads, they're like on public lands, they're a certain feet wide. They're like 1.5 car lengths wide. I mean, they're not very wide roads. They don't maintain them very wide for a reason. They're not highways. They're dirt roads. So they can get basically just a truck in. That's it. Their truck width, probably 10 feet, width, I guess. So he had heard tale of how large the Kodiak grizzly bears were when he got up there. It was his first season up there. And he thought, oh, you are so full of it. There's no way there's bears as big as you're telling me they are. And his first day in the field, he's in this cab of this truck, and it's like a 1.5 ton truck, right? They're loaded down with equipment, and they're going up this dirt road, and he says they see a grizzly, one of these Kodiak grizzlies, in the road. And he says this thing was so big that the front of it was off the right side of the dirt road, and the back of it was on the left side of the dirt road. Like, the whole width of the road, like, so over 10 feet.
Oh my gosh.
He goes, and it's easily, because a 1.5 ton truck sits pretty high. Mm-hmm. They have big clearances on these trucks, so they're sitting high. And he goes, this thing is like looking us in the cab, like eye to eye level, where we're sitting on these seats. And he's looking at this guy going, what the hell is that? and he's like, you will never believe how big these things are unless you see one up close and personal. He goes, they make the lower 48 grizzlies look small. Mm-hmm. He goes, they are the most monstrous things you've ever seen in your life. And he says, I was absolutely terrified to go out in the woods. He goes, I was terrified. And he goes, that was my job, to go out there as a scientist, do this stuff. Yeah. So I can't even imagine running across something. We're not the top of the food chain everywhere we live.
Yeah.
And you run across something like that, you've all seen probably, if you've been on Facebook at all in the last 4 or 5 years, there's a photograph of a woman with that grizzly paw in her. And she didn't kill it. It was a research project, and the bear had been darted. And that paw, he showed me that picture. He goes, this paw in this lady's hand, he goes, that's not a lie. He goes, they're monstrous. Absolutely monstrous when they had to dart these bears for any kind of project. I'm like, nope, I'm out. That right there and then there, I'm done. I don't want to be anywhere near that thing.
Well, and you got to think too. Okay, so the grizzly bears are massive. Everything up there is massive. It's a joke about how big the mosquitoes are and everything. But even coming across a moose can kill you.
Right.
You know, and then the bears eat you, the wolves eat you, the foxes eat you. There's no trace of you up there. You know, so it might not be a top predator killing you, or you just not eating the wrong shrooms. You're looking at the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. There's so many things that can carry you off in an instant that leave no trace of you anywhere. And the weather's so harsh it disintegrates, you know, the fabric and all the stuff that there's just poof, gone, literally gone. But it's nature just kind of swallowing you back in, kind of thing.
Yep.
It's one of my favorite stories. I had a buddy who was a diver. And that was his thing.
Yeah.
He dived places and did weird things. That's what he did. And I'm pretty sure it was Alaska that he decided to go diving.
Ooh.
Some water there. Don't know. And he was doing his diving thing. And all of a sudden, he ran into a huge moose underneath the water. Apparently, mooses can dive.
Oh.
And so here's Mr. Diver. Oh, hi, Mr. Moose.
Oh.
My gosh.
So, I mean, weird things happen every day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even in little inlets and stuff, you'll get killer whales, orcas, coming in there. You can imagine these little kayakers, little paddle boats. And
oh, yeah, no, I have a friend who does a lot of kayaking up there in Alaska, and I'm like, nope. Put me on a lake, like Silver Lake, somewhere on Donner Lake, I don't care. No ocean for me. Not on a kayak. Nope.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not in a kayak. On a Navy vessel, maybe. Not in a kayak. So I hope you guys enjoyed our podcast on the triangles. I thought it was kind of fascinating. I encourage you to look some of the stuff up yourself. And, you know, if you're enjoying the show, let us know. You can find us on Facebook. We do have we're the Pocatello Paranormal Research team. And this is our podcast, Speaking of Spirits. Send us a message. Let us know what you want us to research for you, and we'll do a podcast on it.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.